Welcome to another Kings of War 3rd edition battle report. Dwarfs versus Salamanders, 1995 points. The scenario was custom made. Greetings all to another battle report. This time I got my dwarfs out there, old GW dwarfs, and this is what I have painted. I might have a couple more things, mostly artillery pieces, but this is pretty much it. So I tried to make an army out of my existing figures, and so here's what I came up with. I came up with an ironclad horde with the Mastiff and the Brew of Strength, a shieldbreaker horde with the Throwing Mastiff and the Dragon Shard Shield, 2 Iron Guard regiments, a crossbow regiment, a berserker regiment, a ranger regiment, the dwarf lord with the wings of honey maize, a dwarf lord with the horn of the heavens, a stone priest with bane chant, an ASB with the lute of insatiable darkness, and an organ gun. Just looking at the list, I think that the thing I could have used the most is some chaff, like some mastiff packs, and the other thing is I need to buy some sort of model for one of my dwarf lords to ride, and that would have helped tremendously, especially with the dragon and slasher onslaught. So John has been going down to Cleveland and playing with some of the guys down there, and he's kind of tweaked his list to help him out at 1995 points. And so what he had was on the right, his right flank, you can see John sitting there, a unit of Croxicors, what are they called now, brutes or something, a little unit of geckos behind the wall there, a Lechilodon. Then he had a horde of salamander primes. In front of them were some ceremonial guard, basically as an ASB. And in front of them, another Achilodon. Over on the far flank, he had his dragon, his slasher, and his rhino cavalry. Alright, you can see right in front of John's hand, next to that unit of geckos, that it's a stylized base, and those are tyrants. So we had 2 units of tyrants here on the right flank and kind of one in the middle right. So that was some pretty good opposition for me. So I absolutely knew nothing about playing dwarves. So on the left flank here, I put my unit of sharpshooters, and then my unit of slayers, a unit of crossbows that were behind the woods to start the game. Not because I was scared of anything, but just needed to move forward. I had the first unit of iron breakers, and then the unit of iron guard, I believe. Then the next unit of the defense 6 guys. Over on the far left, I had the shield breakers and my rangers, which I quickly moved back, seeing the onslaught that was coming toward me instead of moving forward. And over there, I think I had my priest with the bane chant over there to support that unit. Okay, the way the scenario worked was that most unit strength was at the center of the table. The thing is, I imposed the same thing that you have with loot once you move into that area, which is no flying, no nimble, no nothing. Once you're in that area, you lose pretty much all your special rules. So that was the idea of this scenario, was to still get all the unit strength into the middle, but understand that your units are going to be restricted once they get in there. Alright, this is another picture of John's turn 1 from the other end of the table. Alright, this is my turn 1. The sharpshooter stayed still here in the foreground. My slayers and the crossbow dwarves moved up. The crossbow guys moved into the woods for a little bit of cover. The rest of the line kind of moved straight up. I didn't want to stay too far back, but I didn't want to go too far forward this early in the game either. Over on the other flank, my horde moved up a little bit over the hill so they could see, probably a mistake. And then the Rangers actually moved backwards because I was too close to all those nasty things that are over there. I mean, there's the rhino cavalry, there's a guy on basically a dragon, and then there's the triceratops looking thing. And so that was all bad. So that's how it was my move this turn. Did some shooting, started picking some wounds away on some of those tyrants, but shooting was kind of underwhelming throughout the game. But on the other hand, it did weaken units to get them down to the point where I could take them out. All right, so on my right flank, the slasher, the fire drake, both charged into my horde of iron breakers, and they did 10 wounds. I had the shard on them, but I didn't want to pop it before they got there because I was afraid that they would not charge once I had that, the dragon shield shard that is, once I had that up. So I had to just go ahead and take the first round and just hope that it gave me a chance on the second round. What I didn't really count on was rolling such pathetic dice. I think I did 4 wounds back to the dragons with 25 shots for 3s. So that wasn't good. And eventually, of course, the 2 giant creatures ground them down and eliminated them. So inevitably I lost the shield breakers, and they had some rather inept dice rolling trying to do some wounds. Even the stone priest who was there to do Bane Chant, he failed, I think, with a double 1 or like a 1 and a 2 to throw Bane Chant. So dice were not going well for the dwarfs down here, at least. I mean, on the other part of the table, I wasn't doing bad, but down here things were going not well. I charged my rangers into the dragon along with my king to try to keep him grounded, since he's basically facing the whole of my line from the side. So I had to throw everything I could at the thing to try to keep him down. And I had him up to like 11 wounds, but that still wasn't enough with, like I said, a little bit bad dice rolling, but not really. I mean, he's a pretty powerful character. All right, so disaster has befallen my right flank, as now the Rhino Cavalry, the Dragon or Fire Drake or whatever it is, and the Slasher are all free. He managed to charge my Rangers in the flank with his Rhino Cavalry and destroy them. Luckily, I'd flown my king away, and he was over there hitting that stupid healing priest that was over there, who had been undoing a lot of my shooting, and I had to stop that. I mean, regardless of what happened over here, I had to stop that. So I had ran him out to get rid of the try to get rid of the healing guy, and kind of keep me ahead of the game a little bit on the left in the middle. So this is kind of the culmination of the left flank, my left flank, and the center. Over in right where the bushes are there, right where that shrub, he did have a unit of tyrants, and over a few turns I did manage to destroy them with a really good nerve roll. The thing is that I wasn't rolling especially well, but they don't have especially a lot of armor, and so with the piercing 2 from the sharpshooters and the crossbows, I managed to take them out. So the unit that's from the far left, he had managed to kill my slayers off, and so between the slayers and the shooting, I'd managed to get those tyrants up to 10. The Dwarf King charges into them, I think, on the last turn and destroys them. All I needed 1 or 2 wounds to really make their roll really tight. The crossbows had moved up and taken out one of his units of geckos, and then started turning toward his ASB. So they charged the ASB, destroy him, and overrun into the flank of the primes, of course not doing any damage, being that they are pretty pathetic. In the front here, my iron breakers managed to do a couple of wounds, but not destroy that stupid Lokelodon. And now I'm in real trouble because my flank is hanging in the wind. So my ironclad with the Brew of Strength managed to destroy his Rhino Riders, but I had no place to go. So I just kind of turned toward the Dragon and the Gecko Slasher. He would charge his Dragon into the flank of my Iron Guard and destroy them. That pretty much gave him the middle of the table. So yeah, his Fire Drake managed to kill off that unit of Iron Guard. Now all I really could do, because no matter which way I went, I was in trouble. So what I did was I just turned toward his Gecko Slasher, and he did charge me and do some wounds. So If he'd have killed that unit, the game would have been instantly over because that's really the last amount of good, decent unit strength I had on the table. So the Slasher had charged into the ironclads, but did not break him. He still rolled really well and did a lot of wounds. Where I made a mistake here is since it was the last turn, I mean, I was already out of position because the Iron Guard were dead, but I had a unit over on his side of the table in the flank of the Tsar's Primes, and so that actually helped me out with a little bit of unit strength. And then, but I was still kind of down. I needed to make a big move, and where I screwed up was when I was fighting the Gecko Slasher. I should have backed up 1 inch, disengaged, and then backed up an additional 2.5 inches. I think if I could have done that, I would have actually got that unit. Unit strength is, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4. I'm hoping it's 4. But I moved them back, and then I could possibly have gotten a draw instead of a loss. So anyway, I still lost. He had just way too much unit strength next to the objective. He had that unit of Ancients, which is worth, I think, a point. Then he had a Horde, so there's 4. The Laquilodon's 1-5, that's 6. And basically I had 2. So this is a 6-2 victory for the Salamanders. As I do at the end of every battle report, I do a final thoughts, and that's just thinking of things that I learned or weaknesses in my army list. In this case, this is my army of Games Workshop Dwarfs that I've had for a long time, and they're not really ever was one of my primary armies. I kind of bought them to play to practice against with my Empire guys and things like that, but never really intended to play them. And one of my friends used to play them all the time, and he enjoyed them. And it was recently that after he came here for a visit, I finished actually painting the list up for most of it. There's a few things that need work on it, but as far as being tabletop quality, they're definitely that. Inside the list, I just used the models that I had instead of proxying things. I mean, I don't have a problem with people proxying, but that's just not my thing. So I try to make a list out of the stuff I have on hand and see if I can play with that. In this case, I think I might have had one too many shooting units and not any chaff at all. So if I could have been able to get rid of something and had some chaff just to slow things down a little bit, I think I'd have been much better off. The other thing I miss is I need something on a Brock Rider to take on the dragons and stuff like that. I mean, on my other armies, I try to use a hero like that, and his job is just to try to ground flyers. So my opponent, he's been tweaking his list. He was down playing in Cleveland, and I think somebody might have pointed out a couple of things for him, and so his army has changed. The last time I played, he had 2 units of primes, and now he has the unit of ancients in there that give you inspiring. I don't recall having to fight against 2 units of tyrants. They may have been 2 units of tyrants the last time I played, but those guys are super hitty and unbreakable morale on top of that. I mean, that's just like the perfect storm of a great unit is lots of swings and being unbreakable, and so therefore no waivers. Matter of fact, I don't think very many things in his army had. It's almost like playing against undead. He had so many unbreakable units. I mean, there was a few that are in there, but not very many. Some other things in here, John's put a healer in his army, and that just makes his high armor guys that much better, because you finally spend some points and you knock a couple of wounds off of him, and John brought him right back. And so I had to actually, instead of staying there to kill his dragon, I actually had to dispatch my Dwarf King with the Wings of Honey Maze to go after that stupid healer to keep him from undoing all my shooting. And so, like I said, it's having a contingency plan every time for these things. And like the healer was killing me as bad as the rest of his army was, so I had to get rid of him, or at least keep him from throwing spells. The fire drake of his, it ate me up. I mean, he just flat killed a whole bunch of stuff. And the slasher, I think every time that thing rolled, it got 5 to 6 hits and 5 to 6 wounds. So that thing killed me too. But anyway, our new campaign is going to feature Salamanders, so I fully expect to see John playing in a couple of these games, and we'll be ready and willing to play him, me and Craig and maybe Sean, who are all my other friends, and allow him into our campaign, and we'll see what happens.